In the USA, we have a government by the people. That means we can decide how much tax we should pay. Let's do that right now. What percent of your earnings should be taken to pay for government services? Here's how you figure that out. After you pay for your housing, utilities, food, clothing, transportation, recreation, health care, medical expenses, education, child rearing, and retirement savings, how much should you hold out to pay for the services your government provides? So right now, pick a number, 5%, 20%, 50%. It's up to you. Just select a percent of earnings that you think is fair to you and all taxpayers to keep the government running to our satisfaction. Just keep a note in your head, one simple percentage number for your tax obligation goal. Got it? Good. Now I'm going to calculate the amount you actually pay to see if you need to make any adjustments to your government to meet your personal goal. We have to pay federal taxes, but of course, we also have to pay city, county, and state taxes. And we're not just obligated to pay what the government collects. Sooner or later, we must pay everything the government spends. If they borrow, that just means we have to pay it later, with interest. So the important number is not the budgets or the revenues, our taxes are based on government spending. I'm going to play with a lot of big numbers, but you don't have to understand or calculate these numbers at all. By the time I'm done, you'll understand your taxes perhaps a little better than you do now. As an example, I'm using a Los Angeles taxpayer, but this is roughly the same for every taxpayer nationwide in each jurisdiction, federal, state, or local. Keep in mind that these facts are 10 years old. I've divided the number of taxpayers by the amount of government spending, so it's very simple. If there was $100 of spending spread among 2 taxpayers, it would be $50 of taxes and obligations per year. Well, the numbers that the government itself provides tell us that government expenditures per taxpayer for the year are right around $50,000. You are on the hook for $50,000 for that year. The government publishes figures on income per household, and there are about 2 taxpayers per household. So the income per taxpayer comes to about $41,000. Okay, so do you remember the percent of your income that you selected as your fair tax rate? Here's the actual percent you owe in taxes for 2013. 122% of your earnings must be paid that year to avoid skyrocketing deficits. How did we come up with what seems like an impossible number? We did it with that magical thing called borrowing. Your government borrowed freshly printed, worthless, unbacked paper currency from the privately owned Federal Reserve banking cartel. Your government named you as the debtor without your informed or voluntary consent. Then they took that money, bought some drones, shot missiles into Afghan villages, and murdered families while they gathered for weddings and funerals, so we could install a puppet government and global corporations could plunder all the oil, minerals, and resources from that country. All of that has been reported, even by the mainstream, corporate-controlled media, so don't tell me I'm making any of this up. So, 122% of your income is your actual tax rate if you pay it all this year. It's more if you don't. It's interesting, isn't it? Any portion of the 122% of your income that you don't pay in taxes, you will have to pay later, with interest. If you selfishly keep even 1 cent of your own earnings, you are essentially putting it on a credit card. Now for the bad news, since your government has been borrowing for a long time, there's a back bill due of $80,000 per taxpayer. It would be wise to send your $80,000 to the Treasury right away. You see, interest and borrowing go up every year, and this could get away from us. If each taxpayer does not send a gift to the Treasury of $80,000 in 2013, you will owe $88,000 in 2014. In 2015, it will be $100,000, and so on. Our tax obligations are far beyond our gross income, and they are now lurching onto a vertical curve. Ladies and gentlemen, we are cooked. So, on your credit card, without your consent, government is lavishly paying for enforcing a global corporate structure with the United States military as the enforcer, while paying back the retiring baby boomers for what they paid into Social Security, and paying for an exploding demand for welfare, food stamps, family subsidies, housing subsidies, transportation subsidies, unemployment insurance, workmen's compensation, Medicare, disability, and Obamacare. They're also fighting a war on terrorism, a war on drugs, a war on poverty, a war on privacy, a war on dissent, a war on the United States Constitution, and, of course, we have to pay for a few multi-trillion-dollar bank bailouts. So government is now very, very expensive, and paying for that costs 122% of your income and rising. No one has a right to borrow money and then arbitrarily name you as the debtor without your expressed consent. To be a true debtor, you must have voluntarily signed a promissory note under full disclosure, and you must personally receive the loan funds. You have not done that. The people who are authorizing the borrowing are not the people who must pay it back. There is a moral hazard here, where we have limited wealth, and they are giving us unlimited debt. In various countries, this fiscal insanity has now led to severe austerity, drastic cutbacks of government programs and services, sky-high taxes, massive unemployment, skyrocketing suicides, riots, currency devaluations, runs on the banks, destruction of national sovereignties, and the surrender of collateralized natural resources to the International Monetary Fund. One country that didn't suffer from all of that is Iceland. Oh sure, their government borrowed and spent just like everybody else's, but instead of pledging to pay back a bunch of crooked bankers for a bunch of phony money loans on behalf of a corrupt government and volunteering into debt slavery from here to eternity, they did what everyone should be doing. The people of Iceland put the bankers in prison. They let the banks fail, threw all their corrupt politicians out of office, elected a new government, reformed their currency, and went on about their business in an era of renewed prosperity. The only way Iceland was able to do that is because the people spoke up and demanded those changes. The people of Iceland were angry, loud, resolute, and unified in that purpose. If we do not do the same, if the perpetrators of this mess are not held to account, it will be you and I paying the full price, with interest. My friends, it is time to make some noise. If you can't think of a course of action, join some group that can help you with that. I'm not prepared to say that the people of Iceland could do something, and the people of the United States of America could not.